This seemingly perfect girl is a bully. She enjoys tormenting others with her boyfriend, and their favorite target is this guy. But that's not all. She has the perfect life to go with it. One day, she decides to take her brand new car, worth over $100,000, for a spin. She gets distracted and suddenly hits a man. When she wakes up, she's relieved, thinking it was just a dream. Or so she thought until she sees the crash damage on the car, confirming it wasn't. Now, she's worried, hoping everything will turn out fine. That is, until she receives a message from an anonymous person claiming to be a witness, someone who's about to make her life a living hell. So, how did it all start? The story starts with a man holding a girl, covering her eyes for a surprise. The girl seems excited. Curious, she asks her father if this is the surprise he promised. He assures her that she'd be amazed. Finally, the father tells her to open her eyes. At first, she is stunned. It turns out to be a brand new white Porsche worth $100,000. What kind of dad buys a Porsche as a gift? Well, the rich kind, of course. Her reaction is a bit expressionless, which seems surprising at first. Back to reality, she can't believe her dad got her a Porsche as a gift for getting into university. What a wonderful father. She asks her dad for the reason behind the gift. He jokes, saying the streets are dangerous, and he wants her to be safe. She hugs her dad, expressing her gratitude. This girl, whose name is Hwa, has everything most people can only dream of: a wealthy father, a prominent businessman, and the mayor of the city. She lives in a luxurious house and enjoys a lavish lifestyle. The scene shifts to a classroom where two girls are in shock. Hwa is recounting the event to her friends. One of them, a black-haired girl, asks if her dad really bought her a Porsche for gaining acceptance into university. Hwa replies it's a convertible model, and she's clearly bragging a little. Another friend leans in, asking when they'll take it out for a test drive. Hwa says she can't drive it until she graduates her dad's orders. The black-haired girl reminds her it's only 3 months until graduation, so it's probably a license issue. Hwa expresses her frustration, saying those 3 months feel like an eternity. The black-haired girl doesn't seem to get why she's upset, pointing out that while some kids take the bus to school, Hwa gets to ride a Porsche. Hwa laughs at the remark. At that moment, they are interrupted by a guy who looks nervous and has bandages on his face. He hands her instant noodles, and at first, you might think he's a simp or an errand boy. Still trembling, he hands them over while she thanks him, calling him hyunwoo. Hyunwoo tries to leave, but Hwa notices something wrong. She calls out to him, sending a chill down his spine. She tells him she wanted the spicy noodles. Hyunwoo tries to explain that the store was out of the spicy kind, so he got something else. Hwa seems to understand, but she comments that he bought the kind she likes the least. How considerate of her, right? But then, she continues, suggesting that if Hyunwoo wants her to eat them, it's not going to happen. One of her friends chimes in, trying to stir things up, but Hyunwoo apologizes again and steps back. Hwa casually opens the instant noodles. Then, she says if it's not what she wants, she's not going to eat it. She spits into the noodles. Hyunwoo is shocked, and so are the onlookers. I'm sure even you, the viewers, are shocked. Next, she tells Hyunwoo to eat it. Why would a girl with such a perfect life resort to bullying? She asks him what's wrong as Hyunwoo tries to come up with an excuse. Then she calls for someone named Jaho, and Hyunwoo is terrified. She tells Jaho, her boyfriend, that Hyunwoo doesn't want to eat the noodles, trying to make him look like the bad guy. Real charming, right? Jaho, clearly angry, asks if he heard her correctly, even though he doesn't know the full story. Hyunwoo, trembling, tries to explain and eventually agrees to eat the noodles just to avoid further trouble. Jaho doesn't waste time and punches Hyunwoo hard, cursing as the blow sends Hyunwoo flying. Hwa smiles while the black-haired girl watches, unfazed, thinking, here we go again. Hyunwoo crashes into the student's locker behind him. Jaho walks up to him, calling him an idiot. Hyunwoo, desperate to stop the abuse, admits he'll eat the noodles. Jaho laughs and leans in, teasing that if Hyunwoo eats it, it'll count as an indirect kiss with Hwa. She and her friends laugh at the remark. Now that's something I didn't expect. Hyunwoo, sweating bullets, tries to refuse and explain. Jaho twists the situation, saying that if Hyunwoo won't eat it, does that mean he thinks Hwa is dirty? Hyunwoo, cornered, tries to reason with Jaho, asking if there's anything he can do. But Jaho, enjoying the power trip, just smiles mischievously and continues bullying him. As Hwa watches, she feels like her life is perfect, like something out of a dream. Her perfect school life. The scene cuts to a chat with her dad, who tells her he'll be home late due to work. She tells him to stay safe and not to drink too much. Since her dad isn't coming home, Jo-swa decides to take the Porsche out for a drive that night. She speeds down the road, enjoying the night sky and the moon as she drives the convertible. She's momentarily distracted, thinking about how perfect her life is. Suddenly, her attention snaps back to the road. She hadn't noticed a man crossing the street, and her expression turns to shock. In a split second, they scream. The speeding Porsche hits the man violently, and from the looks of it, he's in critical condition. She stops the car immediately. The man doesn't survive, lying motionless on the road. Jo-swa is in shock, trying to process what just happened. The Porsche is stained with blood, and she's horrified by the accident she just caused. The scene shifts to a news report covering the case, revealing someone captured evidence of the incident. Reporters try to cover the aftermath, asking her questions. She cries and apologizes for what happened. Suddenly, she wakes up. It was all just a nightmare. Swa is drenched in sweat, struggling to sleep. Relieved it was just a dream, she laughs nervously. As she prepares for school, she writes a note. She reassures herself that everything is fine as she looks at the damaged Porsche. There were no witnesses at the time of the accident, and she plans to cover up the damage. She places a note on the damaged gate, apologizing and claiming she accidentally hit it while starting the car. She looks at it with a worn-out expression, convincing herself that everything is okay. The scene shifts to her school. Standing outside her classroom, she's sweating and visibly worried. Lost in thought, she imagines her classmates talking about the incident. She finally opens the classroom door. Her friends call out to her. The black-haired girl smiles and asks if she's heard the news, while the other girl seems excited. For a moment, Jo-swa is stunned. It turns out they're talking about a music video trailer. She laughs awkwardly at the misunderstanding. The orange-haired girl excitedly talks about how mind-blowing the trailer is and encourages Jo-swa to watch it. As they chat, Jo-swa reminds herself there were no CCTV cameras at the scene of the accident. Her friends don't know anything, and even her boyfriend puts his arm around her as she continues to assure herself that everything is fine. Even when Hyunwoo serves her, nothing seems to have changed. She smiles, thinking her life is still perfect, but then her eyes catch something. She receives a message from someone named M. She looks at her phone, wondering who this person is. She decides to ask by replying, switching her attention to the teacher in class. He made a statement similar to the incident, and wrote a phrase on the board. Jo-swa checks her phone and lets out an M's message reads, "Eyewitness." At that moment, her world starts to crumble. She looks at her phone in shock, trying to stay composed. Meanwhile, the teacher writes a statement on the board. Heaven knows, earth knows, the child knows, I know. She thinks back to the accident. Heaven knows, the moment of the crash. Earth knows, the man she left dead at the scene. You know, her face grows paler. And I know, reflecting on M's message. The next chapter begins with Jo-swa's hands shaking as she holds her phone, reflecting on the mysterious text sent by M, who claims to be a witness. She tilts her head, focusing intently on her phone as she types. She's sweating, recalling the hit-and-run incident and how she thought there were no witnesses. Who the hell is this person, she wonders. She types quickly, asking what M meant, but M remains calm, replying with a teasing tone, "Don't pretend like you don't know. XD." Frustrated and annoyed, Jo-swa frowns and threatens to block him if he keeps talking nonsense. At this point, she's already fallen into the trap anyone who was truly innocent would ignore a message like this. Quickly responds, insisting he's not a weirdo. For now, we'll refer to him as he until we know more. Jo-swa stares at her phone with confusion, asking again what M is talking about. M continues, confidently proclaiming he knows everything she did. Sweat pours down Jo-swa's face as she starts to panic. Who wouldn't in this situation? She nervously glances around the classroom, trying to stay discreet. As she types again, she leans over her desk, trying to keep her composure. This is all happening during class, after all. She asks why M is doing this, and M responds sarcastically, asking why she's being so formal. He then mocks her, laughing and asking why she did it. Now desperate, Jo-swa asks if he wants something, to which M responds with confusion. Then, gives her a disturbing request. Say something funny to Kim In-cheol. Jo-swa feels disgusted and annoyed. Who is that? She asks, not recognizing the name. It turns out Kim In-cheol is her homeroom teacher, and M is surprised she didn't know. Josua is shocked, but not because she found out the teacher's name. She realizes M must be in the same class. The fact that M knows the schedule means he's watching her closely. She supports her head with her hand, thinking hard about who M could be. She first glances at the orange-haired girl behind her. Finally, we learn her name is Kim Bitna. Josua recalls the time she apologized for ruining her foundation and doubts that Bitna could do something like this. Next, she looks at her black-haired friend, Yuhara, who's paying attention to the teacher. But then Josua remembers Yuhara's dad works for her father, the mayor. Their families are close, so she rules her out too. She then sneaks a glance at her boyfriend, Banjo, who never likes attending class. She dismisses him as well, thinking he's too much of an idiot to pull something like this. Deep in thought, Josua furrows her brow. Could it be one of her other classmates? Maybe the boy she bullies, the top student in Yoongguk, or the annoying girl Lee Bora, who's minding her own business. Or even Bora's friend in glasses, Seomina, who's taking notes quietly, gripping her phone tightly. Josua tries to piece it together. Just then, a loud shout startles her. It's the teacher, holding a book, demanding to know who's using their phone during class. Josua freezes in fear as the teacher orders the culprit to come forward. Her heart pounds as she slowly starts to rise from her seat. But then the teacher points to Hyunwoo, sitting nearby with his head down. Josua's eyes widen as she watches Hyunwoo get up and hand his phone over. The teacher scolds him for using his phone in class, and Hyunwoo apologizes quietly. Meanwhile, Josua slumps back into her seat, relieved but now suspicious. Good Hyunwoo BM. The bell rings, signaling the end of class. The teacher instructs Hyunwoo to follow him to the faculty room, and Hyunwoo silently agrees. As the door closes behind them, Hosua's boyfriend, Jaho, scratches his head and yawns, exclaiming how bored he was. He jokes about planning to steal Hyunwoo's pay uniform but got caught. Josua, however, is too absorbed in her own worries to respond. Jaho touches her shoulder to snap her out of it, but she angrily pushes his hand away, shouting at him not to touch her. Jaho and the entire class turns to stare, shocked by her outburst. Some students look wide-eyed, while others gasp. Kim Bitna and Yuhara, both concerned, ask what's wrong. Josua realizes her mistake and freezes. Jaho, looking confused initially, brushes it off and offers to get her something from the store to cheer her up. She quickly tells him it's fine and apologizes for her reaction. As Jaho leaves, he adds that he will be getting something for yourself. Josua breathes a sigh of relief, realizing she overreacted. Her thoughts shift back to Hyunwoo. She's convinced he must be a man, decides she needs to find out more. She casually asked Kim Bitna if anyone has Hyunwoo's phone number. The class falls silent, as if they've heard something outrageous. Josua, puzzled, wonders if she said something weird. Bitna leans in, curious, asking why she suddenly needs Hyunwoo's number. Josua nervously denies needing it for any special reason, trying to brush it off. She thinks to herself that if she just acts normal, everything will be okay. Meanwhile, in the faculty room, the teacher scolds Hyunwoo for using his phone during class. Next, the teacher apologizes and explained he should have told him. Hyunwoo was sorry, looking sad and teary-eyed. He quietly accepts his fate. The chapter begins with Josua sending a text to Hyunwoo, asking him to come see her. She sighs in the restroom, wondering how much Hyunwoo knows. I'm not like Yagami, but I know this is not the right move. As she stares at her phone, her eyes linger on the unread messages, ignoring the students walking by on the stairs. Suddenly, she notices that M has read the text. Her eyes widen with surprise. Where could he be? Completely absorbed in her phone, she continues typing without paying attention to her surroundings when she accidentally bumps into someone. She crashed to the ground, her phone falling with a thud. Gritting her teeth, she angrily looks up to see who she bumped into. It's the top student in the class. Furious, she shouts at him for not apologizing. Glancing at her phone on the ground, she orders him to leave, saying she handle it herself. The student shrugs, mutters an okay, and walks away. Still visibly annoyed, Josua watches him go, silently cursing his attitude. She picks up her phone, but to her horror, it's damaged. Panic sets in as she realizes she might not be able to check M's reply. She lets out a small scream as her finger gets cut while inspecting the phone. She freezes, staring at her broken phone, but quickly snaps back to reality. She licks her injured thumb and grins slyly. She's found her prime suspect, Hyunwoo. But before she can savor her revelation, a student suddenly points out the window, drawing everyone's attention. Joswa's heart skips a beat as she hears someone exclaim that there are police officers outside. Her eyes widen in shock as she hurries to the window with the other students to see what's happening. 2 police officers are making their way to the school, and Joswa watches, tense and on edge. What could they be here for? This made her tensed. The scene shifts to the faculty room, where Hyunwoo is sitting in front of the police officers. They appear to be asking him questions, and Joswa sneaks a glance, trying to overhear their conversation. However, one of the officers, with sharp instincts, quickly notices her, and she ducks out of sight, barely escaping notice. Terrified, Joswa races down the hallway, her mind spiraling with thoughts. Back in the classroom, background characters, the artist didn't bother to complete minded their business. She quietly sits at her desk, her head down. Her thoughts are racing. How does Hyunwoo know about the hit and run? Why are the police here? Did he report her? Everything feels like it's collapsing around her. Just then, a classmate bursts through the door, announcing something huge. Hyunwoo's father was the victim of the hit and run. Another student with glasses chimes in, asking if Hyunwoo's dad is okay, and it's revealed that he's in the ICU, fighting for his life. Joswa stands up abruptly upon hearing he's still alive. Her friend Kim Bitna looks at her, concerned, and asks where she's going since class is about to start. Joswa quickly explains that she's heading to the faculty room. The scene shifts to a walkway, where Ban Jaho, her boyfriend, follows behind her. He complains about having to visit Hyunwoo's dad in the hospital, especially since it's their 100th day anniversary. Joswa, however, brushes him off, saying he doesn't have to come if he doesn't want to. But she plans to visit to confirm if Hyunwoo's dad is the man she hit, a detail she discovered in the faculty room. Reluctantly, Jaho agrees to follow her, muttering that he has nothing better to do. Joswa thanks him coldly, knowing that refusing him would only annoy him further. The scene shifts to the hospital, where we see Hyunwoo sitting alone in the waiting hall, his head down. Poor guy, probably has no friends. Hyunwoo shifts his gaze slightly. She approaches with a smile, acting cheerful, while Jaho is visibly irritated. Jaho steps closer and rudely asks Hyunwoo if he didn't see him. Hyunwoo quickly apologizes. Joswa scolds Jaho, reminding him that they're here to see Hyunwoo, especially considering his situation. Her gaze subtly shifts to Hyunwoo's bag, specifically his phone, her real objective. When Jaho turns away, she leans in close to Hyunwoo, asking if he's eaten yet. Hyunwoo is clearly taken aback by her sudden concern. Anyone would be suspicious of a bully acting nice. Gripping his arm, Joswa expresses more fake concern, mentioning how he was called to the faculty room earlier and offering to treat him to lunch. She orders Jaho to take Hyunwoo out to eat, despite Jaho's protests. Hyunwoo is equally shocked by the suggestion. Insisting that Hyunwoo must be stressed and pale, she pulls out her golden credit card, no surprise, given her rich background, and hands it to Jaho. He looks at the card with a bit of annoyances, asking if he can buy whatever they want. Joswa agrees, pushing Hyunwoo, who is clueless, toward Jaho, while Jaho, still annoyed, reluctantly follows. Hyunwoo glances back at her, puzzled, as she grins at him. As soon as the boys leave, Joswa's cheerful facade drops. This girl desires an Oscar. She immediately grabs Hyunwoo's phone from his bag but curses when she realizes it's locked. Desperate to confirm if Hyunwoo is him, she bites her finger nervously while staring at the phone. Suddenly, she has an idea. She calls him, convinced that Hyunwoo's phone will ring. To her shock, the phone does ring, but not Hyunwoo's. It's M's phone, and the call is connected. A chill runs down her spine as she sees the call timer start ticking. Frozen with fear, Joswa holds both her phone and Hyunwoo's, her hands trembling. She tries to speak to him but gets no response. When she demands to know who is, the line remains silent. In frustration, she screams into her phone, but the call abruptly ends. She quickly notices the commotion she is causing, and Hyunwoo's phone never rang. Her frustration only deepens. She was so sure Hyunwoo was the witness. Could it be his father? No, that's impossible. She hasn't been able to get close to him. The scene switches to Jaho and Hyunwoo in the hospital cafeteria. Jaho asks Hyunwoo what's wrong, but Hyunwoo remains silent. Jaho reminds him of when he ate noodles that Ho Swa spat in, but Hyunwoo stays quiet. The poor guy ate the noodle from chapter 1. Angrily, Jaho slaps him, demanding an answer, ignoring Hyunwoo's stress and fear. At that moment, Jo Swa arrives, shouting at Jaho to stop. Jaho complains that Hyunwoo is frustrating him, but Jo Swa tries to calm him down, explaining Hyunwoo's situation. She then returns Hyunwoo's belongings, acting as if nothing had happened. Jaho, now enraged, explodes, yelling that Jo Swa brought him here on their anniversary. His outburst shocks Jo Swa, who raises her hands. Trying to explain, Jiho accidentally stepped back and had noodles on his clothes. He shouted loudly and became more enraged. This made the onlookers to stop in their tracks. Even Jo Swa is shocked. In a final fit of rage, Jaho shouts that they have no business involving themselves with Hyunwoo's father, whether he lives or dies. With a cold, harsh tone, he storms off, leaving Jo Swa standing there in shock. Hyunwoo watches in silence, speechless. The scene shifts to Jo Swa walking home. She feels defeated, realizing the day didn't go as planned. Suddenly, she's startled when someone behind her asks if she lives nearby. She turns quickly, only to see a police officer with an intimidating look. He requests that she answer some questions. Jo Swa stands frozen, wondering how her bad day just got even worse. The chapter opens with Jo Swa turning around, startled and frightened, asking the officer who he was. His partner, with a cheerful smile, apologizes and jokes. Anyone would be scared if someone who looks like a wanted criminal asks them questions. The officer, whose stern gaze had remained on her, raised an eyebrow and asked his partner if he really looked like a criminal. Regaining his composure, the officer explains that Jo Swa attends the same school as Hyunwoo, judging by her uniform. He asks if she knows what happened to him, and the question makes her tense. Feigning ignorance, she replies, "Why are you asking me?" The partner steps in, explaining the hit and run incident and that they're looking for witnesses. Jo Swa clutches her bag tightly and nervously asks, "Is that why you're here?" The officer's partner scratches his head with a pen, pausing, as if something about the situation feels off. But before the officer can address it, they are interrupted by the secretary, who opens the gate and calls him by name Shin Young-hoon. The mayor, Jo Swa's father, is ready to see you, the butler informs him. As the two officers walk inside, Shin Young's partner waves at Jo Swa before they disappear up the stairs. The partner then comments on some damage to the gate and asks the secretary about it, but the secretary dismisses it like it's nothing. Shin Young tilts his head slightly, noticing Jo Swa trembling. Inside, Jo Swa is battling panic, wondering if the police are here about the hit and run and why they want to see her father. From a distance, she watches as the officers engage in conversation with her father. Her mind spirals with worst-case scenarios, imagining them accusing her of the hit and run. She feels her sanity slipping. Shaking off the troubling thoughts, she asks the secretary for clarification. Why are the police here? Adjusting his glasses, her dad's secretary explains, they're here to discuss a redevelopment project. Relieved that it's unrelated to the accident, he asked if she wanted anything else. Jo Swa nods and tells him not to worry, saying she's fine. Later, after the conversation, Shin Young's partner grumbles about skipping dinner at the mayor's house. Shin Young, the experienced detective, reminds him, accepting favors from the rich means you'll have to repay them 10 or even 100 times over. He opens the car door. Well, that doesn't make sense, his partner complains, but Shin Young simply tells him to get in. As they both settle into the car, the partner asks if they're done for the day, but Shin Young tells him they're heading to the crime scene. What? Overtime again? The partner groans. Shin Young sighs calmly, reminding him, there's no quitting when you're a detective. Fine, the partner concedes, but only if Young pays for dinner. Young agrees, glancing at the rearview mirror. He notices a figure watching them from one of the windows of Jo Swa's house. His expression remains neutral as he stares back at her, then presses the accelerator, and the car zooms off. Jo Swa frowns as she watches them leave, patting her dog as it barks. She comments that the dog seems to dislike the police too. She wanted her dog to bit them, but the dog licks her cheek instead. She remarks sarcastically, "Only you can comfort me." Feeling a bit more relaxed, she sits down, somewhat relieved that the situation wasn't as serious as she feared. But her mood quickly shifts to annoyance, It's all M's fault, she mutters under her breath. She grabs a pen and swiftly starts jotting down names in a notebook, treating it like some twisted game of deduction, akin to a death note. If only she knew M's face XD. After scribbling down several names, she pauses, remembering Hyunwoo. She was sure he was M, but his phone didn't ring when she called at the hospital. With frustration, she crosses his name off the list of suspects. As she stares at the names, she tries to figure out who M could be, considering herself the center of attention. Her mind drifts to In Yoongguk, recalling when they accidentally bumped into each other. Beads of sweat form on her forehead as different thoughts race through her mind. Could M be one of her haters, or someone pretending to be her friend? The possibilities make her feel overwhelmed, and she mutters to herself that she doesn't want to go to school anymore. Suddenly, her phone rings. She whips her head around, her eyes wide with disbelief. It's the mysterious M calling her. For a moment, she's frozen in shock. M has only ever sent texts. This call is completely unexpected. The scene shifts to the hit-and-run crime scene. Detective Shin Young and his partner are searching for clues, using their phones as flashlights in the dim night. The partner, growing frustrated, remarks that the forensics team has already combed the area. There's no CCTV, it's going to be tough finding anything out here. Young, focused, tells him to shut up and keep looking. If he had time to talk, he wasn't searching hard enough. Suddenly, Young reaches for something on the ground. His partner, trying to make light of the situation, bets that this case will go unsolved and asks Young if he wants to wager on it. Without looking up, Young agrees, grinning as he holds something in his hand. How much are we betting? The partner squints, leaning in to see what Young has found. To his surprise, it's a broken car emblem. The chapter opens with Jo Swa noticing a call from M, her body trembling in fear. She slowly reaches for the phone, unsure of what to expect. She answers, her voice shaking, hoping to finally hear M's real voice. Why are you ignoring my messages? M's distorted voice, clearly altered by a voice changer, asked. Frustrated, she yells, my phone is broken. I can't see the screen, but M is unimpressed. You're lying, M accuses. I'm not. I'll send a screenshot as proof, she quickly offers. M laughs darkly. If your screen is broken, how can you send a screenshot? Jo Swa freezes, realizing her mistake. M taunts her, with a brain like yours, how did you get into K University through early admission? Jo Swa grits her teeth, biting back her anger. The broken screen is just an excuse, M continues. You're still the same arrogant person. Repeat after me, M demands suddenly, sending a chill down her spine. Her voice trembling, she asks, right now. If you don't, M threatens, I'll be happy to chat with the detectives. Panic surges through her, and Jo Swa stands from her chair. Fine, I'll do it. She replies, trying to keep him calm, while he revels in her discomfort. What do you want me to say? She asks, biting her lip nervously. M gives her the sentence, one that makes her visibly angry. The next day, Jo Swa is sitting in the car, her father driving along the highway. He notices her gloomy expression and asks, why do you look so down this morning? It's nothing, just some trouble, she mutters, closing her eyes, clearly still annoyed. Her mind flashes back to the night before, when M had forced her to call herself irredeemable trash. The memory makes her clench her backpack tightly, anger simmering beneath the surface. Suddenly, she calls for her father's attention. Dad, do you get along with everyone at work? He glances at her, puzzled by the question. Why do you ask? With her head down, Jo Swa explains, no matter how nice I am, there's always someone who hates me. I don't know how to deal with that. Her father chuckles warmly. Just get along with your friends, he says, though Jo Swa knows that's not the answer she's looking for. She nods but presses on. But what if someone really dislikes me? Her father leans back, thinking for a moment. The more you suspect someone hates you, the nicer you should be to them, he says with a knowing smile. Jo Swa struggles to understand this at first, so her father elaborates, using an example. Imagine a dog catcher dealing with wild dogs in the countryside. To calm them down, the catcher gives them food to gain their trust. Eventually, the dog lets its guard down. During this time, the catcher spots the rabid dog. Jo Swa's eyes widen in surprise, the advice starting to make sense, her mind buzzing with new possibilities. Grinning, Jo Swa thanks her father inwardly, thinking to herself, feed the people you hate the most. Brilliant. With renewed determination, she hands her broken phone to the driver. Wait, isn't he the secretary? Looks like we have a man of my talents. XT. She asked him to fix it. but her real motive is to avoid receiving any more weird messages from M. The driver takes the phone, promising it will be fixed before the school day ends, but he's momentarily distracted. His gaze shifts to something ahead on the road. Suddenly, he slams on the brakes. "Are you okay?" the driver asks, looking back at Joswa and her father, who demands to know what happened. Joswa looks ahead and gasps. Standing in the middle of the road with a bike is someone she recognizes. Her father furiously yells, "Does this person have a death wish?" Joswa, stunned, realizes it's her boyfriend, Jiho. The driver politely tells Jiho to move aside, which he does with an apologetic bow. As they resume their journey, her father frowns, noticing Jiho's school uniform. "If I'd known, I would have sent you to a private school." Joswa laughs slightly, secretly amused at what her father would think if he knew Jiho was her boyfriend. The scene shifts to her school. As Joswa enters her classroom, she immediately spots Jiho. Approaching him, she asks if they can talk in private. Once they're alone, she turns to him, visibly annoyed. "What were you thinking? You could have caused an accident." Jiho, surprised by her outburst, begins to explain, but Joswa hesitates, recalling her father's advice. Taking a deep breath, she softens her expression. "Was it because of our fight at the hospital? I didn't mean to upset you." Her sudden change in tone leaves Jiho stunned. She continues, "Please, don't scare me like that. I just wanted to say hello. I didn't mean to frighten you," he said, adding he felt sorry about what happened at the hospital. He scratches the back of his neck. He continues, "I've been meaning to apologize for what happened at the hospital, but I couldn't find the right time." Joswa freezes, not expecting such an apology. Before she can respond, he apologizes again, pulling his hands from his pockets. Without thinking, Joswa hugs him tightly, surprising him. "I'm glad you're on my side," she said cheerfully. Jiho is puzzled. "What do you mean by that?" "Just stay still," she says softly, planning her next move. "This will make it easier to figure out who's really on my side," she thinks, her expression shifting to something more calculating. As the school bell rings, the scene shifts to Joswa's classmates. A few background students ask Bora, the class president, about the upcoming sports event, and she informs them that it's in the gymnasium. Their excitement quickly fades, with one student wishing he could play football and another wondering if he'll survive until lunch. Meanwhile, Yuhara and Bitna turn their attention to Joswa, who's busy searching in her locker. Bitna, noticing something's off, leans closer. Joswa gasps, her whole body trembling, as she spots a torn uniform inside her locker. Pinned to it is a note from M. "Wear this for physical education class." Joswa stares in disbelief, her heart racing. The scene shifts to the gymnasium, crowded with students murmuring amongst themselves. Bitna complains about the cold, grumbling, "Why do we have to do sports after our college exams?" Yuhara, concerned, turns to Joswa. "Are you okay dressed like that? Aren't you cold?" Joswa brushes it off with an excuse. "It's easier to move this way." She smirks to herself, knowing that M only told her what to wear, not how to wear it. Still, she thinks, if the cold doesn't kill me, the embarrassment from these stairs might. The cheerful gym instructor calls for the class president, Libora, and hands her a dodgeball, instructing the girls to play dodgeball. Joswa's gaze locks onto Libora as the boys are given a basketball. One of the boys asks if they can play football instead, pointing to his soccer cleats. The instructor, crossing his arms, explains the situation outside and disagrees to let them head out. The boys disappointed, feeling defeated, while Joswa wonders what their problem is. Suddenly, a girl gets hit by a dodgeball thrown by Joswa herself. She steps back, still lost in thought. Bitna and Yuhara compliment Joswa's throw. "That's the first time I've seen you so serious about dodgeball," Yuhara comments. Joswa, still fuming, mutters, "I'm just pissed off lately." In truth, she had imagined one of the players as M and couldn't hold back her anger. Bitna points at Joswa's outfit and asks, "Why are you wearing your gym uniform like that?" Joswa gives the same excuse about easier movement and laughs it off. Bitna, deciding to join in, bends down to fold her pants, but Joswa watches with concern. "Be careful," she warns, but Bitna is too focused on her to notice a dodgeball flying straight at her face. The ball hits Bitna hard, sending her flying as she screams and collapses to the ground. Joswa turns to see who threw the ball. It's none other than the class president, Libora, who quickly apologizes. "I was aiming for your body, but it hit your face instead." Joswa grits her teeth. She really seems like an immaterial person, she thinks sarcastically. Bitna holds her face in pain as Joswa and Yuhara rush to check on her. Joswa's gaze darkens as she glares at Libora, memories flooding back. Flashback to the class election. Joswa had been running for class president but was losing to Libora. The tally on the board confirmed it. Yuhara had worriedly complained about the class not supporting Joswa, while Joswa gritted her teeth in frustration. Bitna, sitting behind her, tapped Joswa on the shoulder, cheerfully reassuring her that there were still some votes left to count. But when the top student called out Libora's name for the 4th time, Joswa and her group were in shock. It was clear that Libora had won by a landslide. Joswa had very few votes, and someone even had 2 votes, which only added to her humiliation. That was the first time I truly felt humiliated, Joswa recalls bitterly. Back in the present, Joswa watches as Bitna, holding her injured face, leaves with Yuhara and the instructor. Her thoughts return to Libora. If only she were him, she thinks, longing for revenge. Gripping the dodgeball tightly, Joswa throws it hard at Libora, aiming for payback. After the dodgeball game, Joswa seems dazed, disappointed that things didn't turn out as she had hoped. Yuhara checks on her, concerned. Meanwhile, Jiho points at Bitna's bandaged face and asks, "Can you even breathe with all that in your nose?" Bitna, tearing up, retorts, "It hurts. The infirmary told me to keep it in." Sensing the tension, Jiho gestures for Bitna to quiet down. He shifts his gaze to Joswa, noticing how worked up she looks. Bitna quickly understands. Joswa is still thinking about Libora, convinced she looks like someone who knows everything. But mere suspicion isn't enough. Joswa decides to narrow down her suspects. She turns to Yuhara and asks if they can hang out later, adding that she has something she wants to talk about alone. Bitna feels left out, complaining, but Joswa insists, mentioning that she also has something for Yuhara. Yuhara, both excited and worried, accepts the invitation, while Joswa smirks, feeling like she's getting closer to uncovering M's identity. After school, the driver greets Joswa by name and hands over her phone, now repaired. Joswa's excitement bubbles over as she thanks him and eagerly opens her phone. The driver, with a low tone, asks if he can take her home, but Joswa, distracted, tells him to wait as she checks her messages. Suddenly, her excitement turns into dread. Her hands tremble, her eyes widen in disbelief. A message from M pops up, along with an image of her from the gymnasium. The angle of the shot sends chills down her spine. When did they take this picture? She wonders, her heart racing. At the same time the driver called, but Joswa seemed absorbed in her phone. Before she can process it, another message from M arrives. It's a link. Please don't let it be related to hentai, I hope. What she sees next leaves her speechless, her mouth agape and sweat forming on her brow. It's a video link, something we have seen before. The chapter opens with M sending Joswa a message. "You're out." The video of her bullying Hyunwoo had been leaked online. It wasn't a hentai link, but the real thing. Joswa trembled, not sure if it was from fear or anger, as she watched the video. Her driver, unaware of the chaos unfolding, continued asking if she was ready to head home. She finally told him they could leave, but her mind was elsewhere. The driver obeyed. Also noticed her worried expression. The weight of the situation pressed on her, the possibility of the video spreading, taunting her. Unable to contain it, she screamed, surprising nearby students. The scene shifts to the principal's office. She's furious, her voice booming like a mother scolding a child for staying up too late. The man before her, head bowed in apology, seemed on the verge of being fired. Calming herself, she asked about the video. The man explained it had been taken down from the school's site, but mentioned the person who uploaded it used a school computer through an anonymous account. This only enraged the principal further. "I don't care about the details, just find out who did it," she yelled. The man, still unable to provide answers, apologized again. Frustrated, the principal complained about how the students were giving her trouble right after their college exams. She pointed at the man, who was the manager of student affairs, by the way. She instructing him to ensure the video didn't leak to the press or parents, which could cause a scandal. He assured her he'd do his best, trying to find a solution. The man suggested the problem could be settled with an apology letter. The principal dismissed the idea. "How can we suspend Joswa, the mayor's daughter?" He then asked about her boyfriend. The principal explained there was no need to punish him either, since they were both about to graduate and leave for university. The scene shifts to Joswa and Jiho, laughing together somewhere on campus, though Joswa seems distracted. Jiho, grinning, tells her that he got a message from Student Affairs. They were letting him off with just an apology letter. An easy fix, he jokes. However, Joswa's thoughts are on the video. She wonders if M is trying to establish dominance by making her life difficult. She knows M could easily expose her to the authorities. Jiho notices her unease and asks if she has any idea who posted the video. Joswa admits she doesn't, but she's relieved it was deleted quickly, at least she thought it was. Before she can finish her sentence, Jiho interrupts, his eyes glued to his phone. He shows her the screen. It's the same video, now trending on YouTube. The account name, I know what you did. The realization hits her like a truck. M had planned this from the start, always 3 steps ahead. Joswa stares at the screen, stunned, while Jiho reads aloud the comments, some recognizing her, some asking questions, and one comment that was so nonsensical it made them wonder if the user was even looking at the screen. Reality sinks in as Joswa begins to panic, staggering as her legs give way. Jiho quickly catches her, asking if she's okay. Her mind races with thoughts of her father finding out, the scandal reaching the university, and how this could destroy her future. Jiho, though not the brightest, hugs her, trying to calm her down. Don't worry, I'll help you find the culprit, he promises. We'll tear them apart. Joswa looks at him with a mix of admiration and desperation. His words give her a moment of clarity. He reminds her she's smart, capable, and they'll figure this out together. They both smiles. They look cute when they're not beating the hell out of someone. With renewed determination, Joswa realizes the key to finding M lies with whoever uploaded the video. She shares her thoughts with Jiho, stating that the person recording the video might be M. Suddenly, it dawns on her that Jiho doesn't know about M. She suggests they watch the video again. As they do, Joswa becomes more focused. Her eyes widen as an idea strikes her. She quickly taps her phone, checking something. Jiho chuckles, commenting that hyunwoo sure knows how to take a hit. But Joswa is focused on something else. She asks Jiho if he notices the screen shaking in sync with laughter. Jiho listens closely, confirming that the laughter matches the movements on screen. His face darkens as he realizes something. The laughter belongs to the culprit. Might be a girl, he growls. Joswa's thoughts spin. Could M really be a girl? The scene shifts to Joswa's luxurious home. Inside, she's just been slapped by her father, his face red with anger. He scolds her, his voice filled with frustration. Crashing the new sports car, I could forgive that as excitement. But driving without a license and hitting someone, that's a different story. His voice sharpens, blood vessels visible on his neck. If you're going to do something like this, at least don't leave any evidence. It was as though he was teaching her how to be a better criminal. Joswa, tears streaming down her face, quickly apologizes. Her father, still fuming, sits down, shaking his head. People are just waiting for me to make one mistake. Joswa, I spoiled you because you didn't have a mother, but this is unacceptable. He looks away, muttering that more problems are coming soon. The final scene takes place in a hospital waiting room. It's late at night, and Hyunwoo is sitting alone. Someone approaches him, and he looks up in surprise. It's Libora, the class president. She quietly hands him something. The chapter ends. The chapter picks up at the hospital, where Libora politely asks Hyunwoo if she can sit with him. He agrees, though visibly hesitant as she sits unusually close. Libora asks about his father. Hyunwoo sighs, his face clouding with sadness as he explains that his dad is in a coma with no signs of waking up. It's clear Hyunwoo didn't deserve this kind of tragedy. Libora apologizes, but Hyunwoo waves it off. There's no need, he says. Curious, he asks why she's at the hospital so late. In response, she hands him a piece of paper and explains that she came to apologize. As Hyunwoo collected the paper and begins to read, Libora explains further. She hadn't realized how severe Joswa's bullying had been, and she deeply regrets not acting sooner. The paper turns out to be a petition she wrote, pushing for the punishment of Joswa and Jiho. Libora, visibly emotional, touches her chest and says she's determined to help him put an end to the bullying. Hyunwoo chuckles softly. When you're around, Joswa leaves me alone, he says, thanking her sincerely. This moment between them feels oddly sweet, almost as if there's a deeper connection forming. It's not hard to imagine them telling their future kids how they met at a hospital during such difficult times. The next day, the scene shifts to a protest outside City Hall. People are outraged over the video that M leaked, demanding accountability. Protesters hold signs calling for Josua's father, the mayor, to resign. One man shouts, "A father of a bully shouldn't be mayor." The crowd grows larger, all gathered in front of the mayor's office. Inside, Josua's father angrily peeks through the window, frustrated by the scene. "I just wanted a peaceful morning. Why are there so many protesters?" His irritation mounts as Yuharu's father, standing nearby, informs him that his approval rating is dropping. Talk about bad timing. Josua's dad turns to him with fury in his eyes. "Isn't your daughter in the same class as mine?" If Yuharu's dad were smart, he'd have stayed quiet, but he nervously adjusts his glasses and tries to answer. Josua's father, veins bulging, points accusingly. "It's all your daughter's fault. She influenced mine." Dodging responsibility at its finest. Before the argument can escalate, the mayor's secretary enters the room, interrupting. The mayor snaps, ordering for his car to be brought around. Yuharu's dad, still clueless, asks where they're going. Josua's dad shoots him a scathing look. "What are you? I'm going to handle this myself." The scene shifts to Josua's school, where the mayor arrives with an entourage and a full film crew in tow. The principal and the head of student affairs wait nervously at the entrance, worried but eager to receive him. The mayor steps out of the car, his demeanor like that of a CEO. As he approaches the principal, he thanks her for meeting with him, though it's clear she had no real choice. He introduces himself as the mayor of the city as if she didn't know, and they shake hands. He signaled for the crew to snap picture of the moment. Josua's father, not wasting time, immediately turns to his office secretary and asks what's next on the agenda, catching the principal off guard. It turns out the mayor wants to follow a script he finds surprisingly difficult to work through. The director of the film crew reassures him, saying there's no rush and they can begin filming once he's ready. The mayor, inhaling deeply like some kind of spiritual cultivator, prepares himself. When the cameras start rolling, he puts on a teary face, bowing dramatically and apologizing for failing as a father. The principal and her colleagues are left speechless, their jaws nearly on the floor as they watch the performance. He continues, pleading for the principal to discipline Josua in accordance with school rules, despite his position as mayor. The principal, visibly uncomfortable, asks if he's sure about that. Suddenly, the mayor's expression changes, and he calls for the cameras to cut. He scolds the principal, telling her not to make it sound like he's forcing her. Ironically, that's exactly what he's doing. The filming restarts, and the mayor demands they shoot the scene again. Clearly, this man has multiple talents, one of which is being a master manipulator. The principal exchanges a helpless look with her colleague as the show continues. The next scene takes place in the school's auditorium, where the mayor addresses the entire student body. He begins by apologizing to Hyunwoo for the bullying incident, though the murmurs from the students suggest that Hyunwoo would rather be anywhere else. Josua, watching from a distance, is mortified, wondering what her father is doing at her school. Her boyfriend, Jiho, comments on how bold the mayor is, asking if he's intentionally escalating the situation. Josua crosses her arms and sighs, unsure of how to respond as Jiho sips his drink nonchalantly. The mayor continues, announcing the punishments for the bullies. Josua will serve 30 hours of community service, while Jiho, for his acts of violence, will be suspended and transferred to a different class. Jiho explodes with anger, yelling, "Why is it always me who gets suspended?" This explains he doesn't think. Josua tries to calm him down, urging him to stay quiet. The mayor then shifts gears, explaining that he is part of the anti-bullying campaign and suggesting a new slogan for the school. Josua cringes, fearing her father will embarrass her even more. Sure enough, he turns to Hyunwoo and, with a dramatic gesture, shouts, "When someone tries to bully you or take your money, just scream stop school violence." The students stare, stunned by the outburst, while Josua wishes the ground would swallow her whole. Her father just made things so much worse. I think she should start mentally drafting her memoirs, titled The Last Days of Pageant High School, because her dad just created the perfect plotline. The chapter ends.